Hello and welcome. You're watching NewsX Deepdive. I'm Uday Pratap Singh. Today we're looking at a massive shift in the tech world that almost no one saw coming a few years ago. Apple, a company famous for keeping everything in-house, has officially signed a major deal with its biggest rival, Google. This isn't just a small partnership, it's a total game changer. Apple is officially bringing Google's Gemini AI into the iPhone. It's a move that proves even the world's most valuable company knows it can't win the AI race alone. So what exactly is in this deal? Well, it's a multi-year agreement that gives Apple access to Google's most advanced AI models and its massive cloud network. This technology will power the new Apple Intelligence features we've been hearing about. When you ask Siri to handle a complex task or summarize a long document, it will likely be Google's Gemini doing the heavy lifting behind the scenes. While Apple is still promising to keep your data private, they've realized that Google's AI is currently the best tool for the job. It's a billion-dollar deal that shows that in tech, sometimes you have to team up with your enemy to stay on top. But here's the question of importance. Has Apple always been the master of taking the best technology from everyone else, polishing it and selling it back to us as something brand new? Well, to build what they call the perfect device, Apple doesn't work in a vacuum. They built a massive web of partnerships. Right now, Apple works with over 200 main suppliers worldwide. These companies do everything from mining metals to assembling the final phone, and it also includes giants like Samsung, Google, Sony, Intel, and many other big names. It's a huge operation. Apple basically scouts the entire world for the best parts, and they don't care if those parts come from their biggest rivals. If it's the best, Apple wants it. Let's talk about Samsung. You see the commercials of Samsung and Apple making fun of each other, but the truth is they're deeply connected. For years, Samsung has been the one making the high-end OLED screens for the phone. They also provide for the iPhone, beg your pardon, they also provide the memory chips, the RAM, and the storage that make your phone fast. Without Samsung's manufacturing power, the iPhone wouldn't be nearly as impressive as it is today. Apple essentially took Samsung's best hardware and used it to beat Samsung at the smartphone game. Then there's LG. While you don't see LG phones in stores much anymore, their technology is right in your pocket. Apple uses LG Display for many of its screens to make sure they aren't relying only on Samsung. But the big one is the camera. LG InnoTech provides the complex camera modules and the sensors that allow your iPhone to recognize your face. When you use Face ID, you're actually using technology that LG perfected. Apple took that tech and made it a standard for the entire industry. And if you're someone who buys an iPhone for the photos, you can thank Sony. For over 10 years, Sony has been the one providing the image sensors for almost every iPhone camera. Sony has built a strong reputation amongst professional photographers, and Apple is well aware of it. Even for the new Vision Pro headset, Apple went to Sony for the tiny, high-resolution displays inside. Apple took Sony's decades of camera expertise and branded it as the world's most popular camera. Even Intel has played a part. For a long time, Intel made the modems that allowed iPhones to connect to the internet. But Apple didn't just want to buy the parts, they wanted the knowledge. In 2019, Apple actually bought Intel's entire smartphone modem business. They took the patents, the equipment, and over 2,000 employees. They basically absorbed a piece of Intel to help build, in fact, their own future. Now, this strategy of borrowing the best tech has obviously paid off massively. If you look at the sales from 2020 to 2025, the growth is incredible. Fast forward to 2025, and the tables have actually turned. Apple had a record-breaking year, shipping roughly 247 million units thanks to the massive success of the iPhone 17 series, officially overtaking Samsung for the top spot. Samsung didn't fall off a cliff. They still moved over 240 million phones, but Apple managed to edge them out with a 20% global market share versus Samsung's 19%. So what's the takeaway? Well, Apple's real genius isn't just in what they invent, but in how they collaborate. By signing this new deal with Google for Gemini AI, they are once again taking the best tool available to make sure the iPhone stays on top. They don't need to be the first to invent AI. They just need to be the best at delivering it to you. Dr. Jaideep Bhattacharya, President CDPR, is with us live. Dr. Bhattacharya, what do you make of this new collaboration of Apple with Google for AI?
This, as you rightly said, Apple was always doing this. They were always collaborating, but more in terms of hardware and less in terms of software. Apple really believed that the software is a key glue, which then is able to extract the most out of all the varied hardware that they're sourcing. So the reason why this particular deal is very different is because this is perhaps one of the few times that they're collaborating on the software side. In fact, if you look at maps, Apple had its own maps. For a long time, it resisted even trying to put Google Maps onto the Apple platforms. And therefore, this is perhaps the first time that they have brought in a new technology on software which is not theirs, and which is where it's game changing. And I think it's game changing from both ways because it is leading to Google asserting a very significant dominance in AI. Given that Google is able to reach out to the consumers directly, as well as through the huge Apple ecosystem. And AI is always a two-way street. It's not just that somebody is providing a technology and that's that. AI is also sucking in tremendous amount of data. So the more data they're getting in and the more feedback they're getting in, they're able to improve their AI more and more, which means that it will be very difficult to beat these AI systems in future. So if I start a year later than Google, it'll be virtually impossible to beat them up. And therefore, what we see happening is that beyond Apple stitching together varied components, it's also getting in the Google AI without attempting to create their own AI. Apple shelved its own AI project, and therefore we are seeing some kind of a consolidation happening in the AI market in terms of the core AI systems. I'm not talking about systems that are built on the LMS, uh, but these are systems which are the LMS itself. And hence it'll be very interesting to see how this pans out because typically Apple has come back and tried to take control of the technology. We saw that when Apple outsourced the chips of the laptop, and they got the chips from Intel, and pretty soon they did not like it and they went back and they made their own chips, which is the M1 series, the M1, M2, M3 series of processors that Apple made for the laptops. So even if in future Apple would like to throw away the Google AI and bring in their own AI, because clearly Apple is late in the game in terms of AI, and the end consumer is asking for AI, which is why Apple has been forced to take in the Google AI solution. In future, if Apple wants to throw it out, they will find it very, very difficult. It's not the same as a processor where the technology doesn't change that much in that sense from one year to another year. But in terms of AI, because the system is learning from Apple's own data, it'll become very difficult for Apple to get back on the horse and get their own AI system in. So it's a very interesting development. It kind of shakes the leadership in the AI ecosystem, and clearly, I think in this particular situation, Google is the one which is coming up and having an upper hand in the deal because of the nature of the solution.
Yes, absolutely. Dr. Bhattacharya, also it's shown us how collaborations that Apple has struck have actually helped them better their collaborators.
Absolutely. I mean, that has happened with Samsung. That will for sure happen with Google, because the kind of innovations that Apple brings in forces their vendors, and in this particular case, Google, or in the case of hardware, Samsung or LG and Sony and so on, to force them to make better and better solutions. The kind of cameras that Sony is providing to Apple now did not exist earlier. It was because of Apple's pressure that Sony was able to come out with these cameras. Similarly, the kind of memory chips that Samsung is supplying to Apple did not exist earlier. There was a pressure from Apple to really innovate. So they have been taking the entire ecosystem forward. And as you rightly said, the same will happen in the collaboration with Google, where because of the requirements of Apple and because of the demands of Apple, Google will be forced to do very, very innovative things, much more than what they have already been doing. So it's a symbiotic relationship for sure, but also given the kind of steps Apple has taken in the past, especially in the software side, I'm pretty sure that Apple will be itching to get their control back on AI at some point in time in the future, not in the next few years, given
Yes.
the length of the deal that they have signed with Google, but sometime in future they'll probably try to get their hands back on AI.
All right. Appreciate you joining us, Dr. Bhattacharya, with your perspective on this segment.